Thank you for staying with us on Opinion Court. We're going to get your feedback very quickly. This is what you have to say about the NASA lineup and our discussion so far. NASA is just squad rebranded, nothing new, maybe the logo and the party colors. This election is determined by the people with the spirit of devolution, and NASA is the team. NASA and its principals must offer more than the tyranny of numbers in their respective areas. Whatever cabinet positions that have been created by NASA will come to pass when NASA government takes over. NASA formation will hurt an already struggling Wanjiko. Where will the money to pay 3 new and unnecessary dockets come from? Those are your views. We're going to return to our conversation now. And I want to start with this question to you, Charles. Now that NASA's team is as it is, should Jubilee be sitting pretty saying this is a team that we've beaten before, with the exception of Isaac Ruto, and or should they, not take anything for granted? Is the political landscape fundamentally different, requiring a change of tack?
I think Jubilee cannot afford to sit pretty. First, we know that in the last election, Jubilee managed to avoid a runoff by about only 16,000 votes. Of course, there was that petition of Dennis Itumbi that said spoilt votes should not be included in the tally. But effectively, it was about 16,000 votes that Jubilee used to avoid a runoff. And so if the electoral voting blocks remain the way they were in 2013, it means that the election would be a closely fought affair. What I do think, though, is that there has been a lot of water under the bridge. There are probably parts of the voting population that were inclined to Jubilee that may be inclined towards NASA this time, that were inclined towards CORD last time, that may go towards Jubilee this time. So I think there have been changes, but definitely it's going to be a hard-fought campaign. Both sides have it all to work for.
Prof, because you've argued that Raila Odinga is a Jubilee candidate in NASA, do you believe that Jubilee should stick to what it knows, run the campaign the same way they did the last time? It was very flashy so far. What we've definitively heard is give us 5 more years to complete our term. Is that message going to be good enough?
The only reason why Jubilee is happy with the Odinga candidature is because he's an easier candidate to beat for Jubilee, they think, than probably Musalia or Musalia Kalonzo ticket. So therefore, they are not celebrating. He's their candidate because he's a candidate they can easily beat. If they run, then they would do to another person. But now, with regard to the August elections, most people across the world are fond of voting in mediocre leaders, mediocre presidents. And with some little tip, they can easily vote in mediocre people. So for this kind of thing, what Jubilee should be concerned about is not really to keep celebrating that now, because Raila Odinga has won and that is their candidate, then they are going to sit pretty. What they should be worried about is the kind of anger that is operating. I mean, it has gripped many parts of the country, especially areas at the coast, areas in Western. People don't seem happy. In fact, the bigger question that Jubilee should be asking is that the votes it got in Coast Province, are those votes still there? The votes it got in Western Kenya, are those votes still there, realistically speaking? Power does not accept vacuums. So in this case, these fellows could still be landing from fire to a frying pan, or whatever way you look at it, into the fire. But it's not because they think that NASA can do it, but they are so frustrated in some places that they don't think that maybe even if they go out and go to a worse alternative, they could go. So there is a lot of desperation. So that's what Jubilee should be more concerned about, rather than celebrating the fact that their only candidate in NASA has won. People are more desperate now than they were before.
You know what Jubilee may argue? Yes. Possibly could be the fact that we've also seen plenty of defections. Like you're talking about the coast, then they'll tell you, you know what, we've taken, all these new people have crossed over. If you talk about Northeastern, they're going to say we've had this number of defections.
I think in general, just before the governor comes in, with regard to defections, some of the places where you get especially the defectors that you are getting in the coast, and the people who support Jubilee in Western, some of them are losing the elections in August. So even if they remain, they have defected, and some have continued to support Jubilee, some areas are going to lose the elections in August. So when they lose the elections, it's because NASA has never been tried, and the people are doing experiments. Just like Isaac Ruto is experimenting that he can trust his colleagues. So there is always the first day to experiment. So they are experimenting, and that experimenting can really be dangerous because it can hurt Jubilee in a very big way.
Let me first of all disagree with my friend. He keeps referring to Raila as the best candidate for Jubilee, that they would be happy to beat. Let me tell you that first of all, the one politician that has the largest political base, even in our own arrangement, is obviously Raila,
including Jubilee.
Yeah, in fact, it is Raila has the greatest spread across the country. If you check all the provinces, Raila's presence is noted and is actually accepted. Now,
and yet he's never been president.
Yes, he hasn't been president. Yeah, that is okay. There is nothing absolutely wrong. He would have been president if I had stayed on, for example, in the last election, but I didn't stay on because we had a bigger problem at the ICC, which we wanted to sort out fast, and there are disagreements now and again. And you see, you never quite basically change. The same faces are around. And let me also tell you, you're also telling us that, and Mudavadi wasn't in this team, and he's ignoring that fact. And Mudavadi was contesting for the presidency on his own.
He was there in 2007,
and he got over 500,000 votes in the last election, 2013.
Mudavadi was better off in 2007 because he was a running mate. Now he has some not
in 2013. He was running alone. He was running alone, seeking the presidency, and he garnered a reasonable number of votes. Now, I wasn't there either, and there are so many others who weren't there. And do not equate CORD with NASA. NASA is not CORD, and CORD was basically almost a party on its own. But this one is a coalition of various parties. And you mentioned something about trusting, as if Raila is the one who has broken the MOUs in the past. In fact, Raila has been wronged more than whatever he has wronged. It was Kibaki who wronged Kibaki. Raila trusted Kibaki and wrote an MOU which he never disclosed. And several others have happened.
Kalonzo says Raila betrayed him.
Where? Raila is with me, we were with them, and we all agreed. Raila was simply saying he would like to run. And he, of course, our friend Kalonzo Musyoka wanted to run this time. We persuaded him that, look, gentlemen, if you run separately, then we obviously lose from the word go. Let us work together. Obviously, if Raila had won, then he was supposed to keep a promise to let Kalonzo run this time, if that was the MOU they had. I haven't seen it myself. It was never lodged with the registrar. This time round, we've made it public. This time round, we're filing everything. Made it public. Okay. And let me also tell you something. Briefly, sir. We are not essentially in need for the posts. I want certain policies done. And I think my friend Waiganjo here can attest to that. There are certain things that I'm pushing for through and through, and you can understand me. I can stay in Bomet if those things are being implemented, even by yourself. I don't mind. I only want us to agree on policies. Remember, politics is about what do you believe in, what should be done, what is your agenda. And that is even why we vote in governments. And some governments disappoint us, others perform. So we return them to power. In my view, my friends, my colleagues have not lived up to their promise. Even on the famous laptops. Even the children are still asking for the laptops. They have given a few schools, but they have even given tabs instead of the laptops. They are waiting for the laptops, not the tabs.
We want and they have heard you, I am sure.
And I would request you to invite us to debate that issue one of these
days. The laptop? Yes. Come on over.
And the elections in 2013, I think it was Mutahi Gunyi's phrase, tyranny of numbers. Actually, the election was one on the tyranny of turnout. It was actually about turnout. If you compare the numbers are not very different. But the area, the Jubilee, the now Jubilee region, came out in large numbers.
Yes, because of
my question now is, what is it that is going to facilitate those sorts of numbers coming out for either of the two sides?
Now,
the greatest danger that Jubilee can do is to dismiss this team.
If they dismiss them as non-starters, these people will lose. It's the same people. We beat them in 2013. Their people will stay at home and won't vote. In any case, the election has been won. It will guarantee a NASA victory. At the same time, because then NASA will feel that they need to work very hard to come out because they lost because of the numbers, it is very possible for you to have a higher turnout in the NASA stronghold. So it is not a done deal, and I think it can be very dangerous to dismiss the NASA team. They are not a walkover. They are a strong team, and I think the fact they have come together will excite their base, and that can beat Jubilee if they're not careful.
The game is far from over. Let's just take a look very quickly at the nominations exercises, of course, that have been taking place across the country. Gentlemen, as we wind up, we've seen some major surprises, and if we could play the names for you, some of the big losers, the big upsets that we've seen in the contest. Of course, that of William Kabogo in Kiambu, Jacoyo Midio, MMP, all MCAs in Nandi County, Samuel Chapkonga of Aina Boy, Moses Olisakuda of Kajiado West, Agostino Neto of Mdiwa, Jackson Rob, Kipkelion West, Anyo Kabi of Kiambu, Mary Wamboy of Udhaya, Kabando Wakabanda of Mkureni, Cecily Mbarire in Embu, Dennis Wawero in Dagoretti South, David Musila in Kitui, Esther Murugi in Nyeri Town, Wesley Korir Cherangani, Dungu Givenji of Tetu, Isaac Mora was hoping for Roiro, Dalmo Sotieno in Rongo, Benjamin Cheboi in Baringo, John Mrutu Taita Taveta, Joseph Ndadi Kirinyaga, Cleophas Lagat in Nandi. And with all those big names falling, what is the message do you believe the electorate is sending to leaders, and how does that affect, if at all, the presidential equation, Charles?
I think the message being sent is a very wholesome, exciting message. And it is a message that Kenyan voters are finally coming of age. They will not accept mediocre performance or poor performance and reward it with fresh positions. They will not be bribed by wealth, by money, by propaganda. They are going to make decisions based on performance. I think it's a very good message that is being sent round. My hope is that on 8th of August, that message can be affirmed even more strongly.
All right. We just want to bring your attention, of course, to the news just then. At the bottom of our screens, we believe Jubilee Party is giving those final results in the Nairobi gubernatorial race that has throughout shown a very significant lead for Mike Sonko. Just waiting on word to confirm whether he has, in fact, been declared the winner of that race. They're still announcing the results. So let's quickly talk about Nairobi. And I'll come to you, Isaac, because ODM has been very clear that, you know, they are going to be backing the incumbent in this one. ODM, the NASA arrangement also is that, you know, you will field your own candidates everywhere. And the one person who has been seen as perhaps the candidate who could excite a different lot of voters, aside from Kidero, would be Sonko. What do you think if he, in fact, is at the end of this evening announced as the winner of the Nairobi gubernatorial race? Will he be the man to beat?
That is a Jubilee candidate. The question is whether anybody would want, whether Jubilee would excite and have vote in Bomet. You know, I come from Bomet.
I know you
whether
come
they
from
would
Bomet.
do that in Nairobi.
But you're holding national position
Nairobi.
now as, what was
so
the title
Nairobi,
again?
I'm simply saying that I personally believe Kidero still has a much more credible leadership credentials that he can offer to the people of Nairobi. I wouldn't. Sonko is a friend of mine, but on this one, I'm unlikely to be with him.
Prof. Sonko, does that excite you at all? Will a different lot of Nairobians come out to vote?
Yeah, I think the contest is far from over. Given the ethnic things, you say a different lot of voters who probably never used to participate. You cannot say because of this victory he can still have a walkover. But it is also related to what Charles has commented on, and in regard to your question quickly. The fact is that voters have refused projects. If you look at what has happened in central Kenya, most of the people who are seen as very close to our president, Uhuru Kenyatta, have been voted out. Because all they do is they waste time coming to tell people that we are close to Uhuru, so you vote for us. They have been wiped out. And then, so people are experimenting with new people they could choose. The same thing has happened with William Ruto's, the deputy president's allies in the Rift Valley. You remember one time Gideon Moi was telling the president that, please, if you come to Rift Valley, try to ask for votes directly, but don't come with this man, quote unquote, at the barrier of Makto. And it looks like they have made their threat come true. So they are saying that if you start planting the people around and we don't see anything in them, we shall vote them out. So even the challenge with the Jubilee is with whether or not the president is going to use William Ruto to campaign. And then William Ruto asks for votes through people like Mandako, who have openly said that William Ruto was campaigning against them. It's a big challenge. So the big brother syndrome in our politics is slowly disappearing. And people are looking at issues. If you go to Nyanza, and I must credit the Jubilee on this, because on the first day they tried to do this thing of influencing. But when the elections failed, they kept off. But in Nyanza, the same problem is being faced by Honorable Raila Odinga, because most of his allies, his brother, the young youngers of this world, they seem to be in trouble. But instead of doing it the way Jubilee is doing, I think some of his close friends, or probably with his approval, they are trying to issue certificates to people who have failed. So managing that can cause a lot of problems. So if you get the messages well from Nairobi, there are people, and we spoke on this show, some people, I was of the view that people view Peter Kenneth as a project of somebody, and because of that it seems to have alienated a lot of voters, and that result is not surprising me. So in future, I think anybody who holds power or who is looking for power, the lesson we are learning from this nomination, that don't come with the big brother syndrome. Don't say like Mandako was saying, that sisi ni serikali. People like Isaac Ruto can mess you up, because they could also be serikali at their own level, and you will not succeed. The
name Sonko to you, does it excite? Is this what will change the Nairobi game?
I think three things. And one is that Sonko may benefit from a protest vote by Nairobi residents. I think a lot of Nairobi residents are unhappy with Kidero, even people who politically support him. And that is not entirely Kidero's fault. One of the areas that have suffered from the reorganization of resource distribution after devolution is Nairobi and counties like that. So Governor Kidero may pay a price because of that, and that might benefit Sonko. I think in terms of the general point of the primaries, I think we must now recognize that the Kenya voter is a lot more sophisticated than we give him credit for. If you look at what has happened in most of central Kenya, where, I mean, in Jubilee areas where the nominations are largely free and fair, the people express their wish, and they punished those who were mediocre. They rewarded those who thought support the public good. They stood out for where they thought there was injustice. So there's something happening very quietly to the Kenyan voter, and we need to recognize it, and it will reflect in the presidential election. The danger for NASA and for ODM particularly is that if they are seen by their voters to have compromised the nominations in some parts in Nyanza, that there will be a backlash against it. Not so much that they'll vote Jubilee, but there will be apathy. So they also need to be very, very careful that they don't disappoint their voters, because those numbers will need to come out, and they won't come out if they are unhappy. So you must keep your voters happy, and I think that's what Jubilee realized. Even if the president and the deputy president have favorites, if they take those favorites, it's at the risk of their own ticket. That is what NASA needs to learn.
And I thank you all
something
for your views. Briefly then, very briefly as well.
Okay, a debate for another day. Waiganjo has just said the redistribution of resources, there is something that is quite a little bit messy in that particular arrangement, and maybe another day he'll have to come here and I'll come with him, that we explain what that is and why NASA would like to fix it. And I will come with
you have 1.5 million votes. I would like to.
No, I'm adjusted to 2 million.
2 million now.
Yeah, just after the messy elections by Jubilee. Just adjusted.
We're going to wind up the program. We thank you so much for choosing to be with us. My very sincere thanks to all my guests. Thank you, Isaac, for coming, and everyone else. And have a good night, and of course, keep it Citizen TV.